Hey there, my friend. Welcome back to the second video of the three-part video series on the six-figure formula. I'm Hugo Fernandez and I'm super excited. I hope that you got some massive value from the last video. I'm getting a lot of comments, I'm getting a lot of messages on the success that people are having and kind of some of the breakthroughs, just looking at the list of all the reasons why you think you can't succeed or you can't hit that next six figures. And it's just been amazing to me getting some of the feedback and some of the response. Today I want to talk to you about a simple concept that, again, completely shattered things for me and helped me break through my income. When I was in high school, I took some bookkeeping and accounting classes and some math classes because I wanted to be good with numbers, and I figured if I was good with numbers, I would also be good with making money. And that was far from the truth. I realized that school and society in general doesn't like to talk about money, which is why most people don't have any. I remember going to my teacher and asking him how much money he made, and at the time I didn't really understand that you're not supposed to ask people how much money they made, especially your school teachers, because they're flat broke, they don't make any money. And I asked him that because I wanted to be a teacher. I was a freshman in high school, and I asked him like how much money he made. He got really mad. But I wanted to be a teacher, so I was trying to figure out like how much money they meant. So it was a computer class, and I Googled how much the teachers make, and I was like, okay, cool. It was more than what my dad made, so I was like, that's good. That's a step up, and it's a noble profession and so forth. But in doing more research, the average household income is between like $56,000 and $59,000, depending on the study that you read, but it's below $60,000. And I realized that that's for some people that's great, that's okay. But if you want to live a world-class life and have peace of mind and have freedom and be able to do the things that you really want to do, you have to continually improve and continually grow your income. So in my trying to understand how money worked, I categorized it into kind of three buckets, three different categories of like thinking about money. The first one was your income, growing the amount of money that you make. So making money. The second one was keeping your money, and the third one was growing your money. So the first one is getting money, the second one is keeping more of what comes in, and then so that you can actually grow it. That's the third step. So I'm going to focus in this video on creating income, creating money, and you first have to start with math. And it's pretty basic math, just doing the math and figuring out what your income goal is, and then figuring out what you're going to do to give, what you're going to give in exchange for that. So let me illustrate this with two stories. The first one was when I was 10 years old, and I wrote about this in my book, but when I was 10 years old, I remember my mom was in the garage. Every summer, consistently, she was always making food to go out and sell. We would go to construction sites and sell food, and that's how she was able to make a little extra money. And she was in the garage. I was watching my sisters, watching TV, and at the time I had a little candy business. I was 10 years old, and I was just counting how many had left of the Mexican lollipops and the Lucas and all this other stuff that I had around me. And I was just kind of taking inventory and not even paying attention to TV. But there was an advertisement that caught my attention. And it was this giant, this was like 2001 maybe. There was this giant yellow Hummer. It was being introduced. And it was like, remember those big H2 Hummer SUVs that like rolled over everything. And here was this Hummer just like going beast mode in the mountains and like just crushing. And I was like, wow, I was like captivated as a 10-year-old kid. And then at the end it said, $50,000. And I was like, $50,000, okay, cool. And for me, it was a very simple math problem. Like, what am I selling? How much am I selling it for? And how many do I need to sell to buy that Hummer? And I had my notebook, and I just changed to a clear page, and I started writing like, okay, I have this many lollipops, I can sell them for 25 cents, and blah, 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 and I have to sell thousands of these and thousands of this and after a few minutes, I had my plan for making $50,000 in my little candy business. And I was so excited that I went to my mom and I'm like, Mom, I saw this Hummer, it's $50,000, I'm gonna buy it. She's like, guess one Hummer. She's like, what's a Hummer? I'm like, it's this car. Well, don't worry about it. I want to buy this Hummer. I was super jacked up, super excited. She just laughed. She laughed like hard. And then I was like, whatever. You don't believe in me. I'm going to go and crush it and buy this Hummer. So that summer, I hustled like hard, the hardest I've ever worked as a 10-year-old kid. And one of the reasons I was working so hard as a little 10-year-old was, again, I grew up on like food stamps. So going to McDonald's was like an event. And even when we went to McDonald's, like we couldn't get our own meal because it was too expensive and there were 4 of us. So it was always like you share some fries and half of the burger, right? And then we're gonna eat at home. And so I grew up like that, which also meant that I didn't have a lot of like toys, and my parents couldn't afford to buy me a bike, not even a used bike. So I remember vividly as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old that my friends at the church that we went to, all their parents bought them bikes and scooters and skateboards and all this cool stuff. And after church, they would all just grab their bikes and just take off. And I would be left by myself. And so I would see them because I didn't have a bike to play with them. And sometimes when they got bored or whatever, I would go play with their bike. But I always wanted like things, right? So I think subconsciously that was one of the things that motivated me to like try to really make this thing happen, where if, I could buy this car. And I worked really, really hard. Unfortunately, I fell like $9,500 short, or $49,500 short of my $50,000 goal. And I was like just bummed out, but I was like, oh, $500 as a 10-year-old kid for the summer. I was pretty excited. And I remember my mom and my parents took us to, I don't remember where, but took us, and I picked out a bike that was like $210. And I also picked out this little kitchenette for my little sisters. And for the first time, we had bought brand new toys. That was like probably it was the only time I ever bought a bike. And I bought this really cool bike that was like better than anybody else's, and I had like worked my butt off to do it. And so I fell short of my goal, but I had this cool bike. The moral of this story is I had a target. I did the math. I went to work, and even if I fell short, I was still able to get a lot further ahead. I felt a sense of accomplishment to be able to buy something from my sisters, to buy this dream bike. Unfortunately, we lived in a pretty ghetto neighborhood, pretty bad neighborhood, and some kid down the street, after a week, I forgot to lock up my bike. He stole it. He was way bigger than me. I didn't want to confront him, so I just let him have the bike, and I just let it go. And that was the last time I bought a bike. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is do the math. As a 10-year-old kid, I knew that. And now, the same thing that I just walked you through, I mean, not with the story, but that process of what's my target, what am I selling, how much am I selling it for, and what do I need to do to reach that target, is the same exact process that we walk through with our multi-million-dollar clients when we're selling sales targets, when we're setting sales targets for their organizations, when we're figuring out, okay, how much money can we allocate towards marketing, towards advertising, and we're dealing with like sometimes 6 figures in advertising spend, but it's the same process. You got to do the math. It's basic math, and it surprises me. It amazes me how little effort people actually put into breaking down the math. I've talked to doctors, I've talked to accountants, I've talked to every industry, helping them, because that's what I do on my day job is, we help people make money through marketing campaigns. And it amazes me how little clarity people have on their income goals, on the revenue targets, and then no wonder they don't hit those targets, right? So fast forward, I was 21 years old, and I was working at my sales job, and at the time I was selling cars. This was the first time that it occurred to me that I wanted to make 6 figures. I said, okay, well, after taxes, because everybody has to pay taxes, I have to make at least $150,000, maybe more. I didn't know, but I was like, $150,000 seems like a good number for me. And I went to work and did the math again, and I realized that my average car sale at the time was about $300 in commissions. And I was like, okay, well, how many cars do I have to sell to get $150,000? And I busted out my calculator, and I can do that math now, because this is how simple it is. I take $150,000 divided by $300, my average commission. That means I have to sell 500 cars over the course of 12 months. I have to sell 42 cars a month to hit my $150,000 goal. Now, most car salespeople sell anywhere from like 10 to 15, if you're really good, 10 to 15 cars a month. And at the time, that's what I was averaging, like 10, 13, 14, 15 cars. I'm like, whoa, I'm gonna have to really crank up my production to make it happen. So I'm like, maybe that's not realistic. I either need to sell only expensive cars, because we were selling really, inexpensive cars. I have to like work the bonus program. I know that the car dealership also has a mechanic shop. They also have an auto body shop. Like, how can I get commission on all of these? And then I started really working with the goal that I need to sell over 40 cars to make $150,000. But I'm like, the next month I sold 23 cars and I broke the record for that little car shop. And so I was like, okay, I'm halfway there, but I busted my butt. Like, I was working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I like was there to open or to close. And the only reason I left was because they kicked me out. But I hit 23 cars. So I was halfway down my goal. And I was like, okay, how can I get involved in marketing? How can I get involved in all these things? And I hit my biggest commission. But I realized that I needed to change the way I was working. And then I started working towards that goal. I felt I was halfway short my first month, but I'm like, okay, this is really hard. So I need to go figure out other revenue sources that I can, or other income sources that I can tap into. So when you start setting your targets like that, you start seeing what kind of decisions you need to make. That's my last point on here, is to find the vehicle that it's going to allow you to make six figures. Now, chances are, if you're watching this, you either have a business, you're an entrepreneur, or you have a job and you want to make more money. You want to either get a pay raise, or you want to get a side hustle on, or maybe quit your job and start full time so that you can, make more money and take care of your family. If you're an entrepreneur, it's very simple. What are you selling? How much are you selling it for? What's your income target? Do I need to increase prices? Do I need to increase the volume that I'm selling, the amount of units that I push out? If you're selling a service, like in my last video, I was talking about the photographer. If I was still doing photography and I wanted to make $100,000, just do the math. If I'm selling $1,000 service, just do 100,000. I'm terrible at math. Divided by 1,000, you need 100 clients over the course of a year. If that's not doable for you with your current, capacity, especially if you don't have employees, you need to add employees. You need to add some help. You need to subcontract some stuff out, which means you need to make more money so that you can actually net $100,000. Or you can increase your prices. So if you're selling $1,000 service, how do I sell a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, or even $100,000 service, right? You start thinking completely different. Here's a kind of a question, maybe a little off topic, but it's a powerful question, is if somebody paid you $1 million, what would you provide in value? And I'm going to bring that down to six figures. If somebody were to sign you a $100,000 check, what would you provide, and for how long, and what are the details? And even if you don't think that it's real, like, just do yourself the favor and write that down. $100,000, here's a list of everything that I would provide for that $100,000. You can start packaging that up. You can start trying to find people who actually buy that service that you're offering. Maybe it's a bundle of products. Maybe it's a purchase order that you get from, a bigger retail store. There's a lot of different ideas that'll start sparking when you actually start setting the math and start doing the math and start figuring out what value can I provide for that higher amount. But it starts with doing the math. And then the last thing, like I said, was finding your vehicle. Don't quit your job. If you have a job, don't quit your job. Figure out what you're making there. Figure out if you can go to the business owner, your manager, and say, hey, how can I get involved in sales? You have to get somehow involved in where the money comes in so that you can either get a commission or so that you can start figuring out how do I become more valuable to the company. But you usually got to find where the revenue is coming in. And that means getting involved in sales or getting involved in the marketing of that company. So that's the last thing. Don't quit your job. Figure out what are the revenues. And sometimes it just means like looking in your closet, reselling old stuff, buying a car, reselling it. And then eventually that starts into a business. Don't get caught up in like the legality or the accounting stuff. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. Go and talk to them after you start making money, right? Make your first sale. And then once you see, okay, this is working, and if you want to do it again, then you can find expert help to, set up a corporation if you want, or an LLC. Should I be a, sole proprietor? How do I do all that? Don't worry too much about that. Focus on increasing your income And then when the time comes, when things really start gaining traction, there's accountants that you can hire and attorneys that you can hire, and you don't have to spend an arm and a leg. So that's some of the mechanics of like how making money works, but that's more of the logic, that's more of the actual just numbers of how do I make all this add up to $100,000. It's the same process whether you're trying to get $100,000 or $1 million or 10 million or 100 million. You have to look at the math and you have to track that math. So I hope this video was helpful. Let me know actually in the comments below what your income goal is exactly, and then what your plan is. Break it down into in the numbers. Break it down what that income goal is and how you're going to reach that income goal. Figure out the different vehicles, the different things that you can do to sell to make more money. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments what your income goal is and what your plan is. I look forward to seeing you in the next video where we're gonna talk about the final kind of step of the 6-figure formula.